Chew, 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 that is the thing to do. Chew, 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 good food is good for you. Chew, 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 but only if you chew. That is the right thing to do. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you for one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I'll be reviewing the movie and the recently released Blu-ray of The Road to Wellville. This movie was recently released on Blu-ray this summer, I think in June, from the Shout Factory's Shout Select line. So it was really exciting for me, being a relatively, I really loved this when it first came out on video. I don't know how I would have freaking even known about it. I guess probably the only real way I'd really know about it in '95 is just VHS tapes with trailers or whatever. My history with Road to Wellville goes back to, as I said, 1995, when it was relatively new on video. For whatever reason, maybe I saw a trailer on another VHS tape or not. For whatever reason, I kind of gravitated towards the idea of this movie. I rented the VHS tape and absolutely loved it. At the time, I was a big, huge fan, I still am, of classical music and that kind of stuff. And, the music in this movie is absolutely from, classical music and really classy kind of music and stuff like that. And even the score by, I want to say it's Rachel Portman. And back in '95 I got this as well, which is the original soundtrack CD. The soundtrack of the score by Rachel Portman that was written for the movie, in addition to actually existing classical pieces that are featured in the movie. Absolutely great music in this movie, and that was a huge thing about it that I love. I'm not a huge fan of the era this takes place in. It's kind of the horse and buggy era and stuff, but one thing I will say for this movie, being all goofy, it's really off the wall and it's really kind of a goofy movie, but one thing I will say about it is they really got their production design and the costume design down to a T. It's absolutely really impeccable production design and costume design work. And before I start the review, I do want to showcase this, which is previous to this Blu-ray release, the only version I had on home video of this movie. It has since come out on DVD, but I missed out on that. There's a lot of things that come out over the years on DVD, and you're just like, yeah, I'll get it later, and by the time, you'd be interested in getting it, if that would ever arise, then it's out of print or whatever. And ironically, the DVD is probably much more expensive than the Blu-ray to get on YouTube, or on eBay rather. But this is the only version of the movie I had on home video before I got the Blu-ray just recently. The original Columbia Pictures home video, Columbia TriStar home video Laserdisc release, dated 1995. And since the movie, it's funny because, well, it says here that the movie's 120 minutes long. I think it says it's 118 minutes on the Blu-ray. But since it's just basically right around the two-hour mark, you do have 2 discs and 3 sides with this particular release on Blu-ray or DVD, or I can say the right format, Laserdisc. And I wasn't a big fan of the artwork. I don't like the fact that I guess I just don't like the bottom of it, where you've got Matthew Broderick and Bridget Fonda and Dana Carvey and John Cusack in a bowl of frickin' cereal or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of the lower half of the packaging or the artwork for the home video release. But that's what the Laserdisc from 1995 looked like. Of course, featured in the 1:8:5 widescreen aspect ratio, deluxe widescreen presentation, they're calling it. But that's the only version I had of the movie on home video until I recently got this, sporting what I can only imagine is the original poster artwork, which is always so much better than that cookie cutter home video artwork that they use. But I guess they feel like they gotta splash the performers or the actors' faces on the box or whatever. And I guess having their faces in a bowl of cereal is okay or whatever. There's the back. Talked about the Blu-ray after the review of the movie, and having just seen the movie twice recently, and it should be said, this is the first time I've seen this movie probably since the '90s. When I was younger and a teenager and stuff, there wasn't so many, your funds were limited. So when I bought a movie or something, or got into a movie, a lot of times, you weren't able to buy like all kinds of movies or any movie you wanted. Your funds were limited, so you'd buy a movie. So I'd buy a movie or something like that, and I just like soak up that movie. I just like rewatch it, rewatch it, rewatch it. So maybe there was like 2 or 3 movies, for the summer of '95 or something, that I'd just be rewatching, absorbing. But that's how I was when I was a kid and a teenager and stuff, just really kind of focusing in on fewer titles and watching them over and over, more than like a whole plethora of movies, just watching them once. Like nowadays, if I get a Blu-ray release of something, from my past or whatever, I might just watch it and then throw it in the pile. If it's even fortunate enough to be watched, these days it's like buy stuff and throw it in a pile, and you might not even watch it for a while. But what I'm trying to say is, it's just been such a long time since I'd seen this movie, and I had been previously so familiar with it. It was just so wild, probably not having seen it for maybe 20 years or more. It was just so wild seeing it again and not knowing what's coming next. But after every moment that passes, you're like, oh yeah, that's what happened there. But yet you don't know what happens the next moment. And it was that way for the whole movie, moment to moment. It's like, yeah, I remember that, but I can't tell you what's coming next. Oh, I remember that, but I can't tell you what's coming next. It's funny because when I watched it the second time just recently, I'm like, it was all fresh again. Like I knew what was coming next, and it's really rare for me, having been so into a movie, so long ago, and not having seen it for such a long time, and then revisiting it. It's just such a surreal experience, because it brings back all of the memories and thoughts and things that I was thinking and feeling at the time. And it's just like I said in some other review about movies, from your past just being like smells or tastes or certain things that just bring you back to that era. And so the sights and sounds of seeing a movie from 20 years ago or more, and having seen it for the first time in like 20 years or more, it's a wild kind of as close as you can really get to time travel. It's really a unique experience. But anyway, on to the movie. The movie is really goofy, and you can only assume by all the work and effort they put into the movie that they were expecting and hoping this movie to be more successful than it was. I don't think this movie was received very well, and it's understandable, because the era it takes place in, and just the goofy quirkiness of the characters and the offbeat, just really goofy sensibility of the movie. It's really understandable why it didn't really do well. And it's ironic because it's got a lot of big actors. Anthony Hopkins, Bridget Fonda, of course, in the early and mid and even to late 90s was a big name. Dana Carvey and John Cusack. And am I missing anyone? I think I pretty much said it. Matthew Broderick. A lot of big names in this movie, but as you can see, or as they found out when they made and released this movie, the big names doesn't necessarily mean success. But this whole movie basically revolves. Before I even start that, I don't want to forget to mention, as long as I have his name on the tip of my brain here. God, is he even in the? God, he's not even in here. But this movie also features what's his name? Oh, geez, is it Michael Lerner? God damn it, I wish I could remember. It's that goofy guy from Barton Fink, it's, Michael Lerner. And it's of course me and my dad were fans of him from Barton Fink, and it seems like he was in another movie like that where it was just, just larger than life. And this is the role Michael Lerner's in this movie is an absolutely perfect Michael Lerner role. It's absolutely perfect, and it's just like, oh my gosh, he's such so fun to behold in this movie. But as I was trying to say, this movie's about basically Anthony Hopkins plays the Kellogg guy. I can't remember his full name, is whatever. Is it John Kellogg? The guy who created the breakfast cereal. And incidentally, this movie's based on a novel. I don't know. I can't imagine. I imagine that it's really confusing. I don't know a lot about the history of the making of the movie, or the story the movie's based on. But it's like based on the real guy. And one can only assume that the Kellogg guy was actually like this, where he was had some health-minded sanitarium that people could visit. I don't know if I can only assume, being a viewer of this movie, that it's based on the actual guy, this guy who made the Kellogg cereal, and this guy must have actually had this health nut cult thing going on, and then the movie kind of just goes wherever it wants to go based on just setting up those premises. You know, it's not like, I guess in a perfect world I should have researched maybe the actual, you know, guy from what history they give us and stuff before I did the review. But you know what? Jesus Christ, I'm not some kind of a, you know, freaking film scholar per se. This movie's been a part of my past, and I like the movie, and I just recently got it, and I'm just going to talk about it. But I don't know anything about the supposed real history of the Kellogg guy or anything like that. For the movie's purposes, the Anthony Hopkins plays, I think it's John, I don't know, John W. It's the Kellogg character, you know, who makes the cornflakes and stuff, who's got this sanitarium, this you know, kind of health kind of leads this kind of health food, you know, cult, if you will, where he's got this place where people can come and visit. And I can't tell how long these people are supposed to have stayed. It seems like they stayed for almost 6 months. In the movie, you can't tell, because it's like when they arrive, you can see their breath, and they go through Christmas, then it's like spring again. So it's like they stay there for a better part of a year. They don't explain how long they're there for, which is kind of disheartening or disillusioning. That's the wrong word. It's just kind of weird to not know how long they're supposed to be spending there. But basically, Bridget Fonda and Matthew Broderick are a married couple with a troubled past. I'm not even going to get into that, but basically she drags him to the sanitarium to get to get better or whatever, this and that. There's a lot of interweaving stories, different separate stories that are taking place. And John Cusack and Michael Lerner are on their own kind of thing with Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey plays one of Kellogg's estranged adopted sons who. It's really funny because they have 3 whole like flashbacks of him as a child, and it's what I like about the movie and what I liked about it from day one. It's just its quirky offbeatness. I mean, it's funny how it tackles. It's mostly a goofy kind of movie, but then it tackles some serious issues and stuff like that, and it gets serious into a point of the movie where you're like, oh my God, I didn't see this movie getting serious, and then it goes back to goofy, and it's just like, oh my God. And luckily for you guys, the movie's so like it jump cuts from all over the place so much where I can't really do a beat by beat of the movie, which is probably a relief for you guys, and me included, because that would be exhausting. But I can basically just tell you that that's the basic premise of the movie, and throughout the course of the movie, you know, the movie doesn't necessarily, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't really say one way or another if it thinks that Kellogg's practices, quote-unquote health practices, are good or not. I mean, I agree with some of it and don't agree with, you know, probably most of it. And as the movie wears on, these characters, I mean, it's basically a movie about health cult people, because as the movie wears on, of course, most of the time is spent with, you know, Matthew Broderick and Bridget Fonda's character at the Kellogg's place, sanitarium. But then as the movie wears on, like the last half of it is about like through other people they meet there, Bridget Fonda is becoming aware of other kind of goofy, other health people, fanatic cult leaders and stuff. This one guy from Star Trek, call him Mealy or whatever the hell his name is, plays this other guy who's a different kind of a guy who's more into sexual, I don't even know what the hell he's into. He's like, just liberate, you know, he's more again about just nudism or whatever, or sexual free expression and this and that. And then they get into, and that guy turns him on to this other guy, this German guy who, you know, sticks his arm up women's, you know what's, to, you know, do therapeutic womb manipulation massage. So it's basically a movie about people getting hung up on all these different, and maybe it was going on then, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but for the purposes of the movie it's going on then. At the time, all these different quote-unquote health fads, you know. So it's kind of like, okay, you've got Kellogg doing this guy, Colin Mealy, doing this, and this German guy doing the, you know, Handenbongen you, or whatever the hell it's called. So you've got all these different health cult nut leaders trying to, you know, so that's basically what the movie is about. It's about Bridget Fonda being this pro, you know, healthy living kind of person who's trying to find, you know, having had a tragic something go wrong with her relationship with the Matthew Broderick character. I guess she's all obsessed about trying to quote unquote get healthy, and you know, Maybe that was something that was going on at the I can only imagine this takes place at the end of the 19th century or whatever, and maybe that was one of the things they were pushing in the media or the culture at the time, is, health this and that. I mean, who the hell knows? But that's basically what the premise is about of this movie. And I gotta say, I mean, the movie really, I like how the movie puts all this stuff in front of your face, but it doesn't really have its own opinion on any of the stuff that it shows you, which is kind of cool. It's not like trying to shove anything down your throat or any kind of idealisms, specific idealisms down your throat. It just shows you these particular ideals, or in these particular schools of thought, if you will, and lets you make what you will of them, as do the characters in the movie. I kind of feel like the characters are more or less healthy at the beginning of the movie, like Matthew Broderick and Bridget Fonda, and they go through all this crap throughout the course of the movie where, Matthew Broderick is more or less, just has, basically a crappy time, and Bridget Fonda maybe not so much, but comes out at the end of the movie just like more or less the same, I mean, I guess he says he feels just good, better than he's felt in his entire life. We don't know why that is. Maybe because he's been through so much crap at the sanitarium that it makes him appreciate the way his life was before they arrived there. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the movie's trying to say. To me, of course, I take away from just, don't bother trying to, find people to lead you. You got to lead yourself, and that's my takeaway from the movie is, don't look for other people to guide you, or to try to figure out who you are based on other people's, don't let other people tell you what to do and how to live. And well, granted, I think there's some things that the Kellogg character says that makes sense. I think majority of it is a bunch of bullshit, like, about sex and, being a, oh, that's it. The Kellogg character is against sex unless it's specifically used for procreation, whereas the Colum Mealy character is more about, free love or whatever, or having sex, enjoying sex, enjoying sex. And the Kellogg character is more about, sex. Just sex for fun is just a drain on the system, where Colum Mealy character is more like, well, if you don't have sex, then all these stuff, builds up inside you until you're ready to burst or whatever. So it's a movie about these different health fanatic kind of people that have different points of view and stuff. It's mainly two different points of view, and the guy who sticks his arm up women's what is more like just a third, really very brief side character. So it's kind of interesting how the movie shows two different sides to something, and kind of lets the viewer decide how they want. And throughout the process of all this, you've got all kinds of just gags and hijinks and this and that with so you've got, I don't know, two or three different stories going on and stuff. And also the John Cusack, Michael Lerner stuff is, Michael Lerner is a scammer, took all John Cusack's characters onto money, and they said they were going to make a breakfast company, and it's not working out. They end up basically just buying or stealing a bunch of Kellogg's cornflakes and making their own boxes and pouring the stuff into there to try to make a business. And it's a movie that's, maybe why I gravitated towards it when I was, a teenager and stuff, and why I still like it is because it's unconventional in the sense that it's not so much beginning, middle, and end. It's just like, okay, here's 2 hours, and it's just, these goofy characters, here's the setting, let them, bam, let them go, and let them see what happens. It's just kind of just 2 hours of hijinks, and whatever goes and whatever happens. It's just, I don't know if it's hard to really describe. It's the kind of humor this movie is. It's definitely, it's got some crude humor and some funny humor and all kinds of different humor, but the music I think is absolutely amazing. Of course, the original classical pieces that are featured in the movie, and also the original music that was written by what's her name? Where's the CD? Is it right here? Yeah, Rachel Portman did a lot of great freaking original music. Kind of if maybe a female, not to take away from Rachel Portman, but maybe a little bit Danny Elfman-ish, but really, really great. music, and once again the environment is really beautiful, especially during the summer stuff, towards the end of the movie where it's like spring or something like that. Really beautiful production design and costume design, like top notch. You can tell some money was probably spent on this movie because it's just like you'd think they actually took a time machine back to whatever this is, the late 19th century, and filmed it there. That's why it's so weird that you've got a movie that's basically kind of just a goofball kind of comedy that spends so much money on costumes and production design. It's really not something that's done too terribly often. Usually if you have a screwball comedy like this, you just have it filmed in, current contemporary times just to save money. But I really feel like this movie was a risk, and definitely was a risk, and it didn't really pan out very well for those involved. As far as the studio or the people who invested in the movie, it didn't really do very well. And even online, if you look at the rating for this movie, it's not a very high rating at all. It's kind of like The Weatherman, how I really like that movie, but most people don't really like it. I don't like this movie as much as that, though. So I'm going to be able to go. I'll go 3. We'll go. You know what? We'll go 3 1/4 stars out of 4 stars for Road to Wellville. There's things about it that don't like, it's definitely for me not a 4-star movie, but it's definitely very, very enjoyable. I guess the reason why it's no higher than that is just because, some of the hijinks and gross humor and stuff like that aren't really my forte, but there's not a whole hell of a lot of that in this movie. I'm not too sure this movie, I don't know, there's something about it that I feel like it didn't necessarily ever fully find its identity necessarily per se. It does feel like a lot of chopped, gobbledygook chopped together. And mentioning chopped together, I do want to comment that the editor or editors or whoever they have on this movie to cut it, there's a lot of sequences and stuff where I felt like it was really cut well, and they really have a good editor and or editors on this movie. From a technical standpoint, I thought like it was really a lot of interesting things done editorially from an editing standpoint. And when I watched it for the first time again, it was just like, oh yeah, that I remember that, and oh that was done well, and I like how that was cut and stuff like that. I would definitely recommend it. Incidentally, a couple days ago, well, the first time I saw it was I watched it on Prime Video. It's free on Prime Video if you've got Amazon Prime. And then I'm like, you know what, I gotta get this Blu-ray before it goes out of print, because I waited on the DVD until it went out of print. So let's just scoop up this Blu-ray because I should really have this, and I haven't bought this in any form since '95. So I think I can put $20 towards this movie on Blu-ray. So if you do have Amazon Prime, it might still be free to watch, and I would definitely recommend it, definitely for free. And maybe even, if you've been watching my channel for a while and we're kind of in tune with what I like and what you like, maybe even blind buying the Blu-ray if you feel confident with, sample some scenes on YouTube, whatever. But it's definitely it's funny how many names are in the big names are in this movie, and it's just such, when I think of this movie as a whole, I just think it was just such a risk. It was a risky movie, and that's one thing I like about it. It took a risk, and it did some things that, I guess we can pretty much call them risky things. So that's what a risky movie does. Risky things, apparently. Now on to my Blu-ray review, having just watched the Blu-ray for the first time in 5.1. It's like seeing seeing the movie for the first time. What's that stupid phrase they say? See it again for the first time. The Blu-ray is absolutely, stunning to behold after seeing, the only version VHS and then Laserdisc and then the crappy Amazon Prime streaming. I want to say that the version that's on Amazon Prime, because I'm like, a lot of times, I thought maybe it would be this transfer. I can't say for sure that it's not, but it seemed like when I watched this, it seemed like a different scan altogether, like different color, it just seemed different than the one I watched on Prime. It may or may not be, but regardless of what's on Prime, the Blu-ray looks absolutely fantastic, and so often is the case with Scream Factory releases. It says here DTS Master Audio Stereo. Well, don't let that fool you. This is in DTS 5.1 surround, and it's not just 2-channel stereo, it's 5.1, and I will say that it sounds really great, and it's not so much it's more left-right stuff, and even that it's not that often. The bulk of what sounds great about the 5.1 in this movie, of course, is Rachel Portman's music. Like when it really gets going and bumping and thumping and all this and that. The music sounds absolutely amazing in the 5.1, and one would have thought being released in '94 it would have been, you know, actually came out and mixed in you know, and digital discrete audio, but when you look at the end credits it says just Dolby Stereo, so I can only assume based on that this was one, you know, this movie wasn't actually released or mixed and released in digital discrete audio, so maybe at some point, see, I can't comment on the DVD that was released, maybe the DVD that came out years ago was the first time it was 5.1, I don't know who did the 5.1ing, but whoever did a good job. You know, the left-right stuff is really good, and the best thing is just the music when that's going really sounds good. Not so much going on for, you know, surround-wise, but when the whole sanitarium blew up at the end and burned and stuff like that, the explosions and stuff had a nice low frequency, you know, oomph to them and stuff. So the 5.1 I can confirm is pretty confident on this movie, especially if it wasn't originally that way in '94, or, you know, mixed that way. Image looks fantastic, a very filmaic look to it. It doesn't have, I don't think it has one special feature to speak of. I was hoping after the movie was over on the Blu-ray I was going to watch the trailer. No trailer, I don't think anything in the lines of special features to speak of, but for 20 bucks, I mean, you know, I'm not the, you know, I'm mostly, when I get a movie, an older movie on Blu-ray, I'm pretty much just getting it for the movie anyway. Special features, unless they're really amazing, can kind of take them or leave them anyway, but I guess that'll pretty much do it for my, you know, review of the movie on Blu-ray. As I said, quirky, kind of just offbeat comedy. Comedy is an interesting beast, where it's just like there's so many variations. It's such a big, you know, a big range, or a big spectrum, if you will, for comedy, and I'd say this movie dabbles in a few different kinds of comedy. You know, clever things written, you know, clever dialogue, just gross fart humor, and, you know, other kind of nasty sexual related humor, and so it's kind of, you know, this movie goes across a little bit of the spectrum of different kinds of comedy, you know, if you whatever. So I guess it's not just like one kind of gross comedy or clever dialogue. It's all kinds of different funny comedy, I guess, in that. And it's funny how they interweave some kind of more serious stuff into it as well, and that's kind of off-putting to a certain extent, like Fargo. That's kind of one of my problems with the movie Fargo, as I said in my review of that. It's just like, yeah, you don't know whether this isn't as bad. You know, Fargo's like, yeah, am I supposed to be, you know, anxious here, or laugh, or be, what am I supposed to do here? But maybe that's what people like about Fargo who like the movie. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this review, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Choo choo choo, that is the thing to do. Choo choo choo, good food is good for you. Choo choo choo, that is the thing to do. That is, what? How does this go?